Hi everyone and welcome back to Coffee and Crochet. This is episode 2. My name is Marlise and I am going to show you all of the blankets that I have done over the years, at least the ones that I still have. So I have been in a little bit of a blanket mood for the last, say, year maybe. I don't know what it is. You would think, especially now with it being warmer, or at least spring is on the way, that I would have moved out of my blanket phase, but I am still going strong. So I love blankets for a few different reasons. The first reason is they're relatively simple. You don't have to pick a really difficult stitch pattern. You can pick anything from, single crochet to double crochet, V-stitches, corner to corner. You can do a whole bunch of different things in a blanket and it looks fabulous. So without further ado, I'm going to start showing you some of the blankets that I have made over the year. First one is this little lap blanket, and it is basically a 3 double crochet, chain 2, 3 double crochet pattern. And then I have joined these together with the granny shell. So this one I just made a bunch of strips and kind of joined them together. And it's not very big. I had it over my couch and I decided it wasn't very big. And actually, I made this out of just acrylic yarn, and as it sat in the sun over the course of a year, pretty much a summer, it started fading in certain areas. So I said, okay, maybe I shouldn't have it draped over the top of the couch in the sun. So now I fold it up and I have it under my work chair in my office. So when I'm working from home, I have something nice and comfy to sit on. So that is blanket number 1, and it's not really a blanket, but I could have continued making strips and made this into a full-size blanket. Second blanket I'm going to show you is one that I just recently did a tutorial on, and this is probably one of my all-time favorite blankets that I made. So you can see it is the Jelly Bean Baby Blanket. I made this with the Lion Brand ice cream yarn, and it came out absolutely fabulous. I cannot say enough about this yarn. Sometimes I have trouble visualizing what those self-striping yarns will look like once it's in a project. And sometimes it's hard for me to start using them because I'm really afraid that the striping isn't going to be what I anticipate. This one, however, turned out absolutely amazing. We use these little bean puff stitches every few rows, and they're separated by half double crochet rows, which really makes them pop, in my opinion. It was easy. It does take a little bit more yarn just because you're making those bead stitching every few rows, but really, I used 3 balls of this yarn and I have a pretty decent size baby blanket. The next one I'm going to show you is this. This is also a Lion Brand yarn, and it is an ice cream yarn. I think it is Bunny Tracks is the colorway, but I'm not sure. Again, it is using it looks like a 5 double crochet shell. So a 5 double crochet shell, and then you work a V-stitch into the top of those, and you just kind of alternate it. It's really pretty. I'm hoping to have a version of this blanket up as a tutorial at some point. This one I made a while ago, and it was before I was on YouTube, so I wasn't really thinking about writing a pattern for it. I was just kind of crocheting. So there's my little Bunny Tracks baby blanket. And I think I used 3 balls for this one too. And I've just got a nice little single crochet border on it. So that one was really simple too. Okay, so the next blanket I want to talk to you about is my take on the Chevron Style baby blanket. And this blanket I made with a Mandala self-striping yarn. I don't have the colorway off the top of my head right now, but if I find it, I will put that down in the description box below. All right, so this blanket is pretty easy. I wouldn't say it's simple. It's easier than doing your traditional chevron style where you really have to be careful and count your stitches. So you create those peaks and valleys by just working double crochets or a chain, alternating them. So you always want to work sort of like the increase at the same point and the decrease at the same point. And because it doesn't require you to count your stitches, it's a little bit easier. You're kind of working into the space from the row below. So once you get your initial setup row or two done, then it's easy sailing. Whereas with the traditional chevron style blanket, you've really got to be careful about counting your stitches and making sure that you're on track. And stitch markers always help with that as well. But if you're not, then all of a sudden your peaks and your valleys are sort of skewed. The next blanket that I'm going to show you is just a very simple corner to corner. Again, this is using Lions Brand's Mandala yarn, and it's just a very simple corner to corner. I have a tutorial for this blanket. I'll link the videos down below for any of these blankets that I have tutorials for, so you guys can check those out. But this is just your simple corner to corner. I found with the corner to corner that it works up really well. However, you don't want to lose track either, because there have been times where I've sort of missed slip stitching to the next little box, and then I've got this space, and it's not those nice little, steps up. It kind of goes over and then up a little too far. So, well, it's not difficult. You do kind of have to pay attention to what you're doing. And I have this one as well that I did. It's a corner to corner using the Mandala. And I love using Lion Brand's Mandala yarn for these corner to corners because the color changes are just super cool. So I don't know if you can see that, but I put a nice border on this one, and this I used a different yarn. So I wanted something to match that went with this colorway, but I didn't necessarily want to use the same ball, the same color changing ball. I wanted just a solid all the way around, and I think that actually looks really cool. And they're just little scallops. The next two blankets I'm going to talk to you about are just a granny square style blanket. I did an infinity granny style square, and I just kept going and going and going. And this one was sort of a rainbow version. So I actually changed colors each round. Love, love, love how it turned out. Again, it's with somebody else, being enjoyed by them. The thing with granny squares is when you change colors, you have so many ends to weave in at the end. And this blanket was probably one of the worst blankets for having all those little ends on the back every time I changed colors. The biggest pain, I tried to weave them in as I went, but of course, when you're in the crochet mood and you're just like, I'll weave it in later, I don't want to do it now. Well, that's what happened. So at the end, I had a whole bunch of tails to weave in. Totally worth it because it came out so amazing. But yeah, that's a pain. And I didn't put any sort of border on that one. I literally just kept going until I had a pretty good size square. It was probably a lap blanket size, so it wasn't, smaller than a twin size. It was a lap size or a throw that you could put over your couch or something. It wasn't very big. I could have kept going, but the thing with granny squares, when you keep working them and working them, sometimes they can, the bigger you go, sort of the more ripply or off they get. It's hard to get them to really be a square. Similarly, I also made a granny rectangle blanket. I just started with the rectangle and then worked that out and out and out. And for that one, I also used a Mandala Lion Brand style yarn. I don't remember the colorway. I think I only had one ball of that one. And so I needed a project, a blanket that I could make. They only used the one ball. And so I just kind of went until I didn't have any more yarn. And it turned out really cute too. The next blankets, and these aren't really blankets, but I thought I would show them. Back when my kids were little and I had more time, I did some sewing. And we made these little quilts for my parents, their grandparents basically, and great-grandparents. So what I did was we went to Joann and I bought a whole bunch of fabric. I have this plain fabric, and we bought some fabric markers, and they drew a whole bunch of squares, and I quilted them. So I made the little quilt box. They made the little art squares, and you can use these as lap blankets. I think most of the people that we gave these to just hung them up. I made little sewn hooks here, and you can just run a dowel through and then hang it up. And this is another one that we did. So each quilt is different, and each one has different pictures that they drew, and they came out super, super cute. Okay, so I have a few blankets left. The next two blankets I'm going to talk about are ones in which I knit. Let me back up and say that I learned how to knit way before I learned how to crochet, and I love it. It's fun, but it takes me so much more time than I want it to. So I made knitted baby blankets, say 20 years ago when I first learned how to knit, for all of my cousins and friends that were having babies, because I wanted to give them something that I made, and I thought that was just a really nice, I just love the thought of that. It would take me so long to knit even just a baby blanket. I like not quick things, but I like things where I can see immediate progress. And with the knitting, especially when I was first learning, it was back and forth, and I would have worked 2 hours and have a blanket this size. It drove me nuts. The first blanket I'm going to show you I made fairly recently when I got back into knitting, and it is just the knit garter stitch baby blanket. I have a tutorial on this pattern, and I'll link that below. The tutorial that I have is for like knit washcloths, but you can keep going and make it into a blanket, and that's what I did. So it's like an eyelet. So you create the border as you go, and then it's just knit stitch, and you work it almost corner to corner, which is nice because the beginning works up really fast because you've only got a few stitches that you're knitting across until you get to the full length of the blanket, which is your middle part, and then you start decreasing. So you're working it, corner to corner. The blanket that I made, I don't remember the yarn, but I remember that it was called Neapolitan, which was actually appropriate because, as you can see, it's sort of a brown, pink, and cream color, and it was self-striping, and it worked up super cute. I also made a little washcloth with that too, and a hat, so I had enough for just a whole sort of layette set, and all of those things are now with somebody else. The next blanket that I'm going to show you is my knit garter stitch temperature blanket, and I don't remember the year, which is really sad at this point. As I was making it, I'm like, oh, I'll remember. I don't remember. And it is huge, so I don't know how much of it I can get on camera, but it's just a knit garter stitch. Here's my cold months, my warm months, and this thing is huge. I can put it on my queen size bed and it still hangs over on all sides. So it is a big blanket. I loved making this blanket. It took me the whole year, obviously, but I loved everything from going to the store to pick out all of my colors, you know, from 0 to 10 and 10 to 20 and 20 to 30, and just deciding on what colors go best together. So I decided just to go with your standard typical bright rainbow colors. I don't know if I have too many reds, which would be, you know, like the 100 degree. I have a few pinks, and I think that was pretty warm. A fun blanket. As I pulled this out the other day, now that we're in spring, this is something that I put on my bed sort of in the spring and the summer because it's warm, but it's not overly heavy. It's not like a comforter. So I pulled this out the other day, and I realized I never put a border on it. I don't know why. I was wondering why it looked funny after I made it, but I was so happy that I actually made a knitted blanket that is this size that I kind of just put it out of my mind. And now I'm thinking I have to go back and put a border on. So I think I'm going to put a crochet border on. You can kind of see this edging. It's just a bunch of woven in ends. It's very unfinished, which now bothers me. I don't know what I was thinking. Now the last completed blanket I'm going to show you is this one. This again was a Lion Brand Mandala yarn, and what I did was I did a corner to corner granny square, and I did a bunch of them. So I decided how many rows basically I was going to increase, and I made all of my squares the same. They are connected with a granny shell. So 2 rows of granny shell. And I didn't have any yarn left over for the granny shell, so the yarn that I used to connect them is completely different than the mandala. It's just an acrylic yarn. I just picked colors I thought looked good. The border is a granny shell in that pink, and then I used a bright blue and did little scallops all around. So the bright blue doesn't quite go with it, but I thought it actually came out really cute. And this I just have sitting on one of my chairs in my living room. So, but this one, I really like this one. And I will try, I don't have a tutorial for this up yet, but I'll work on that. So the next blanket you will have seen if you're watching my 2023 Super Stash Busting Blanket Project. This blanket is in progress, and here we are. So I'm not going to show it too much. I'm still working on it, obviously. And you can see it's just a whole bunch of different colors. I'm using an off-shell stitch pattern, which I highly recommend. I will probably at some point do an actual tutorial on this stitch in this blanket pattern, some version of it, because I absolutely love how this is coming out. And the colors are crazy, and my daughter wonders why I've got this little neon pink patch in there. So that is a work in progress. And finally, this blanket I'm going to show really quickly. I'm currently working on this, and it will be a tutorial pretty soon, as soon as I'm done. So this is gorgeous. Look at this color. Look at this. don't know the best way, but you can see it. Again, it's a Lion Brand Mandela self-striping yarn. I cannot get over how bright and vibrant this is. And I will show you the stitch that I'm using, and we will put a border on it, and it will become a tutorial, so you can check that out at some point. It is absolutely gorgeous. Just wait till you see all the other colors that go into this. And that is my sort of quick overview of blankets. I love blankets. I love them for bigger projects where you can learn a stitch. You can make a big project for somebody, a blanket. You can set it down and then pick it up. If I'm working on multiple blankets at once, leave notes for yourself so you know what size hook you're using or needle you're using, what stitch it is. Maybe just write a little bit about the pattern, anything that can help if you think you're going to put this project or blanket down and pick it up later. Like I said, any of these blankets that I showed you, for which I have a pattern tutorial for, I will put it down in the description box down below. And happy crocheting, everyone. Have a wonderful Sunday, a wonderful week, and until next time, bye.